Hello, dear unknown. Do you believe we have a soul? Do you think that after death, our soul can linger? Many don't. Some because they firmly think it's impossible, but most because they know it would be too terrifying to admit the existence of ghosts. The story I'll share with you today have been shared by police officers. Believe them or don't, the choice is yours. But just remember that most of them were skeptics, and they still ended up chilled to the bones. Have you ever heard of residual haunting? Interestingly, they tend to be the most common paranormal encounter. It can be a scent, or in this case, a sound. Let me rewind it for you. This first story happened in a small town in Nebraska, in the 90s. Many houses were abandoned around there, which was unfortunately attracting many drug addicts and thieves. To avoid their presence as much as possible, many police officers were patrolling all night. Generally, nothing fascinating was happening until one wintry night. One of the police officers was casually driving around. He made sure to slow down close to the house that was mostly affected by thieves, and saw with relief that everything seemed calm. 2 hours later, he passed again in front of the house, but this time something caught his attention. The door was wide open. Frustrated, he called dispatch, asked for backup, and began to approach the house with caution. And that was when the weird part began. While there was a thick layer of snow on the ground, but no snow falling, there was not a single mark in the snow. How did they enter without leaving a trace? Confused, the police officer proceeded and stepped in silently. Armed with his flashlight, he observed the decrepit interior, molded and torn tapestry, broken furniture, and of course, most of the ornaments stolen away. However, once again, despite the heavy layer of dust, no footprint. Maybe the wind opened the door then? Reassured he wouldn't have to handle anyone, our dear friend was already holding the handle to close it properly, when something made him freeze. Swallowing back his fear, he yelled,
"Police department, come downstairs."
Thinking it was apparently only children, he informed dispatch of the situation and walked through several rooms to reach the stairs. After making sure no one was downstairs, he called again, but no response, just noise. Maybe it was an animal, but what kind of animal sounds like kid laughing? Determined to get answers, he decided to go upstairs. As soon as he reached upstairs, the laugh immediately stopped. Facing a small hallway leading to 3 rooms, he stayed immobile for a second. Ignoring the chill in his spine, the police officer turned to the room in which he heard the sound and opened the door just enough to peek inside. Nothing. Only a few debris and a pile of plaster. Frowning, he stepped inside and discovered that there, in the middle of the room, laying on the top of a debris, was a page torn from a children's book. And guess what was on it? A police officer. Drawn by panic, he immediately ran out of the house, locked it, and made sure to never go there again. Yes, you guessed it. This time again, the story takes place during a night shift. I love night. However, even though our first character is once again a police officer, the first person who witnessed what I'll share with you was an employee of a morgue. As the man was sweeping the floor of a hallway, something caught his eye. There, hidden in the darkness, something or someone had just run from one room to another. Not wanting to take any risk, the janitor decided to immediately get out of the building and locked the intruder inside. Not wasting a second, he called the police and waited for them. This is when our storyteller comes to scene. Him and his partner came as soon as possible and interrogated the janitor to get as much information as possible before entering. The janitor explained the darkness prevented him to see any particular feature, but he was sure the intruder was unarmed and was probably a woman. Gun in their hands, the two police officers then proceeded to enter the morgue. Slowly walking inside with the janitor behind them, they began by calling out anyone who would be in there. No answer. Making sure to stay alert, they checked room after room while keeping calling for the intruder. As time was passing, less and less rooms were remaining, and they still hadn't found anyone. Not anyone alive, at least. As our storyteller was checking a pitch-black room, he barely got the time to switch the light on that
Hey, stop, turn around.
his partner had just found the intruder. Was it one? His partner was pointing his gun towards the end of the long corridor. Seeing the confusion of our storyteller while looking for the suspect in the direction his partner was pointing at, he said,
She went around that corner.
already feeling victory flowing through his vein, the janitor smirked.
She's trapped. No exit that way.
Knowing they would face the suspect, the police officer asked the janitor to lock himself in the waiting room before going where they saw her escape. As they were getting closer, they made sure to promise not to hurt her. Once they reached the end of the corridor, the partner of our friend pressed his back against the wall and carefully peeked inside the room. She was there, standing immobile in front of a cradle. Still being handicapped by the darkness, he could barely discern her long, dark hair, the fairness of her skin, and the fact that she was indeed unarmed. Ready to act, the partner entered to begin a conversation with the mystery woman. However, she had other plans. As soon as she heard him enter, she opened the grey door, ran inside the next room, and closed the door behind herself. The police officers ran after her, but the door was locked. Knowing they needed the help of the janitor, they asked him to come and open the door. His reaction was surprising. Indeed, once he reached the door, he asked them if they were sure.
This door? You sure? This door doesn't lock from the inside.
Trying to brush away their worry, they waited for him to find the right key and opened the door. They lowered the handle and yelled,
We're coming in. Have your hands up.
Flashlight illuminating the room, they immediately inspected it. No one. The janitor switched the light on. The room was empty. Only some equipment against the wall and two grenades in the middle were there. One was empty, but one was covered with a sheet with what appeared to be a body underneath it. Nice hiding spot. Ready to arrest the woman, they confidently walked towards the gurney until something struck them. The smell. There was a terrible smell. The smell of death. The two officers looked at each other, frowning. One of them pulled the sheet down and there was a woman laying. Brown hair, fair skin. The tag on her toe said she died 4 days ago. Are they dancing now? One of the darkest sides of being a detective is to face sex and crime against children. In this story, the person described this assignment as the worst he ever got. A young woman came in with her daughter to report her ex-boyfriend while they were arguing about the custody of the child. Why did he call it one of his worst cases? Well, I think his word would be better than mine.
Long story short, it was legit and one of the most violent and sadistic cases I've ever had, so I'll spare the gruesome details. I still have no idea how this woman made her own way to the precinct with a toddler.
As the toddler was a witness, the detective had to talk with her to hear her side of the story. Indeed, the young woman confirmed her daughter had unfortunately seen everything. Sounds more like a true crime than a paranormal story, doesn't it? Well, you might change your mind soon. As the detective was interrogating the child, he heard a very curious story. The conversation between the parents began to get more and more violent. Tension was turning into scream, and scream to violence. Helpless, the kid witnessed her father hitting her mom with more and more cruelty. The life of her mom was on the line, when a curious character appeared. The little character called her the nice woman. Apparently invisible to the screaming parents, the nice woman was however far from ghostly for the kid's eyes, as she couldn't see through her. As soon as this mysterious woman had appeared, she hugged the kid, promised she and her mom would be safe, before beginning to sing her a song in another language. The moment she had finished her song, the nice woman flew towards the main door and knocked. Wondering what it was, the sound distracted the father, which gave time for the nice woman to guide the girl and her mom to their car before vanishing. Curious, isn't it? Well, what's even more interesting is the fact that what the young woman says correlates with the story. Indeed, the woman explained that her ex-boyfriend was pressing a knife to her throat when, out of the blue, he ran towards the door and ran away. Apparently, she hadn't heard any knocking sound. Interesting. I guess she was most likely not in a state to hear this kind of detail. 8 hours later, the father got caught, and let's say he was far from being sorry, and confirmed he would have killed his ex if he hadn't heard the knocking. In the end, we'll never know who was the nice woman, but I already know I like her a lot.